Hi, everyone. It's another episode of Tick Ed. This is Lynn and Mary. And today we're going to be talking about a video that came out and a report or a study that was done by the Texas Public Policy Foundation, TPPF. And it's called Suitable Provision. And that's a play on words regarding the Texas Constitution. So, Mary, you want to say anything while I'm pulling the video up?
It's interesting. Kevin Roberts has resurfaced a lot lately. And when I first got to know the people at TPPF, um, Kevin Roberts was transitioning out and going over to the Heritage Foundation.
Mhm.
And I used to think these people were friendly, that, these were our allies.
Mhm.
And oh my gosh, they have such a beautiful, expensive building. So perfectly situated right there in Austin. What a little gem. And I guess it's all tax free. I don't know that they pay no taxes on it. Um,
Well, they get a major tax break. It's because they lobbied years ago to get a tax break because of since they do research. So it was a loophole they found in the law, and they built that building back when
No,
Brooke
that they remodeled it. It's an
remodeled it.
old building and they restored it. It's a beautiful building and they have done a fabulous job with it. But anyway, so I met Roberts there and then encountered many people. Brian Phillips had just started working there and he now kind of, comes after us on Twitter because he's their communications director. You again, these people used to be allies, um, but
Well,
they're not.
they weren't so they started out for school choice. So they had an
Yeah,
agenda from the beginning, but then they were doing other things and conservative policies that were
right.
supposed to be
But yeah,
scrutinizing how we were spending
honestly,
money.
they're political. I mean, one of my favorite people at TPPF left. And one of the reasons that he gave for leaving was because they had gotten too far into the politics of it. And I would say that's true. Um, you
Well,
know,
I don't even mind if they're political, if they're on the correct side of the taxpayer. You know, our constitutional republic and representative form of government, it does get political, but they've got people like Mandy Drogan who's pushing school choice and she goes up before the legislature and she cries on cue and they use low income parents as their reason for pushing government regulated school choice.
so,
Um,
so
yeah.
I would say good work, bad work. I think their work on school choice, they're executing what the vice chair, who's been involved for 20 years, they're executing his agenda, which is Tim Dunn. So they are spending a lot of
Tim Dunn is a billionaire oil man from West Texas, and he's using his money to unseat Republicans who do not align with his school choice agenda.
I mean, he has a bigger agenda than just school choice, but let's focus on school choice because TPPF has spent an enormous amount of money
Mhm.
and they have gone about the state now 2 sessions, uh, and spent an enormous amount of money marketing for the school choice, which we've taken a position against it from efficiency, affordability, and redundancy.
Okay, well, I'm going to
So,
play this real quick because it's quick.
okay.
It talks about
The
the
majority of
spending.
Texans think the state spends less than $1 billion on education each year. The real figure, $93 billion, nearly 5 times what the state spends on public safety and criminal justice. That's $16,800 per Texas student. And it's all paid for by you, the Texas taxpayer, with just over half of your property taxes going to cover the cost. And while your property value had gone up over the last decade, so has your tax rate and the revenue it provides to the school district. It might cost you a lot, but hey, it's all worth it if Texas students are getting the kind of quality education they deserve. After all, they're the future. Except, despite the massive increase in spending, student performance has been on a decline. According to the nation's report card, in 2024, state proficiency in fourth grade math fell from an already disappointing 44% down to 40.
I'm going to pause it right there because you and I would agree that academic performance has gone down, spending is up, and this math stat is very important because the commissioner of education appointed by the governor Abbott, so Mike Morath, he's been there since he was appointed in 2015 and sworn in 2016.
So, and I would say that, again, I'm glad they, take that on the road, because we spent October 2022 all the way through May of 23 going about the state, talking about the return on the investment of the TEA. And again, it's an agency. How many times can I say it? The agency is where everything bogs down and where everything fails. And it's where there's appointment, there's no accountability. And let me talk about appointment. The commissioner of education, he's not really been approved in 6 years now, because the governor
confirmed by the Senate, but he's up for reconfirmation and reappointment, and that he's a holdover at the pleasure of the governor is what they say when I call the
yeah, but that again, the Senate has the authority to not allow that, and they don't. So there, you cannot say that there's accountability. But TPPF, come on, where were you?
Has a phenomenal opportunity to the mothership, which is the TEA. They're very friendly with Mike Morath, and they don't see that he is the agency is the behemoth, that they keep growing, and TPPF supports bills like House Bill 1605 curriculum bill, because that was a $2.44 billion bill. So they can't support these bloated bills that grow the government, grow the agency, the employees, and the spending, while then complaining that our kids aren't learning and aren't on grade level. And our property taxes, they're part of the problem if they support the spender bills, and they do.
Yeah. Amen. And they're there to support every spender bill, every spender.
Yes, they are. I watched. We've been going there for years. Okay, I'm gonna keep playing.
Okay, wait a second before you put it back up.
What?
Look, I want to know why they did a dog and pony show all across the state, giving Abbott a platform, spent all the money to talk about things that were not based in fact, but were political favors. And then they can do something like this. We don't have the funds. We don't have the access to create and to spend to make a fabulous presentation like this. But they do. But what do? They go on a dog and pony show about emotions and appeal on choice and all of this, instead of facts about looking at what's happening with the money. Keep going.
20 students, only 8 can do math at grade level. In reading, Texas has one of the lowest proficiency rates in the country, with only 55% of students.
So, and one thing I didn't say about the math is under Morath and a bill at the legislature, they brought in math innovation zones where investors could turn a profit on math scores if they use certain software vendors. Well, those have failed. Math innovation zones have failed, and no one talks about that. So we just move on to the next thing. And then in reading, part of the reason why kids aren't reading on grade level is because of bills that came prior through the legislature and through No Child Left Behind at the federal level that changed the way we teach kids to read. And TPPF has supported companies like iStation and vendors for reading instruction. And then they complain that the kids aren't reading on grade level, and they're not reading on grade level because we're experimenting on them, and TPPF supports the experiment. So I'm sick of the games. Okay, keep going.
It's reading at grade level. That same fourth grade class of 20, only 11 kids are reading at grade level. And we know that if students aren't able to catch up by the fourth grade, they're unlikely to ever. In education rankings across the United States, Texas is only 12 spots from the absolute bottom. But maybe that $93 billion only seems like a lot. And the real problem is that we should be spending more. For reference, let's look at Florida.
No.
Despite spending less money per student than Texas, Florida is ranked at the top. So if Texas is...
Which is complete bullshit. Florida is Jeb Bush country. And I know that he's no longer governor, but the reforms he rolled out, TPPF supported here. And during the pandemic, Kevin Roberts, you mentioned the former CEO, is that what, Yes, of TPPF. Now at Heritage, Kevin was interviewing Jeb Bush during the pandemic, April of 2020, talking about innovation and bringing in digital learning and remote learning and all the things that fast forward after the pandemic we realized were failures. So they're endorsing reforms, and this is a lie about Florida. I'm sorry, Florida. If you talk to the teachers and people on the ground, Florida's not better off because they implemented school choice and the Jeb Bush reforms. No, I call BS on that. Okay, hold on.
More of your money to achieve worse outcomes? Where exactly is all the money going? It must be textbooks, classroom supplies, teacher salaries, and the tools that help our students thrive. Or is it? In reality, only about 40% actually reaches the classroom. The other 60, 18.4 billion is spent on administrative pay, 15.5 billion on operating expenses, and a staggering 24.5 billion on land purchasing.
Okay, I actually love this because this is it's partial truth. So I'd say 80% of what they're saying is true. The part that they leave out, the lies by omission, is the 20%. That's just a rough figure, but so yes, 40% goes into the classroom, 18.4 billion administrative, 15.5 billion operating expenses and expenses, and then 24.5 billion in land purchasing, construction, and debt. This is the part where they've got to be more specific, because you and I know that a massive chunk of that debt is technology, infrastructure, broadband, and the devices that have to be refreshed. My district spent $10 million on refreshing iPads. They don't talk about the technology because that would be a problem for not only their donors, but their agenda to push the innovation that they talked about with Jeb Bush in the classroom. They cannot complain about the debt if they're not going to address their role at the legislature and their role in their lobbying for the technology. You and I know that they are
horrific. They have pushed the technology. And I want to go to something a little deeper on this when they talk about the land, because there were a lot of people on social media that went after, oh, this school has AstroTurf and this school has blah, blah, blah in the athletic program. And I feel the same way. And one day I'll tell the story. I'll tell the story about my mother's fight against TEA and how it goes back to TEA forcing our school district to build new athletic facilities. I mean, insane. So
right.
You can't disconnect that. It's been going on forever. But when you talk about technology, it goes way beyond. They're talking about administrative. Well, my school district has to hire somebody in the technology department to be at the school at several different campuses to keep these devices and everything up and going on a day in, day out basis. So they created a whole nother payroll in technology at the administrative level of education that they're not calling out where they bloated the administrative, and that does not go to, and it has there's no fruit, as you say, there's no direct return on the technology with the student or with the teacher. So they have totally left that out. And then the other thing that I want to say is when it comes to debt for land and buildings, that was a local decision. And a lot of times the stress and the pressure for a school district to make a new building or add this or add that, it comes from up above. It's not just being generated locally. It's TASA, it's TEA, it's Huckabee. I mean, they do that to appease the people that are making the big donations. And real estate is a huge boondoggle of taxpayer cash. No matter what arena of the government you're looking at, it's where they hide a lot of money, and it's where a lot of the kickbacks come from is in real estate. Mm-hmm. And so but again, I don't like what they're doing with this because I believe they're setting up the public to agree to have local control taken away.
Well,
and I'm not in favor of that.
it's problem reaction solution because I think they have to show the problems in the school districts to get the reaction. And then the solution is a counterfeit solution, which is school choice, which was the whole reason they were created in the first place by James Leininger and Fritz Seeger when they established the Texas Public Policy Foundation to begin with. And I know that when Brooke Rollins was there, she worked for 15 years courting donors, wooing donors in order to get them to buy into the idea that we needed the free market approach to education and introduce competition through the vouchers and charter schools, which you and I know that that's not a real solution. Okay, I'm going to keep playing this.
Okay.
School district spending on land purchasing and construction, building new schools, facilities, and infrastructure has gone up 116% in the last decade. Texas is finally moving up the rankings at something, beating out union-controlled California by $2.5 billion for the crown of being number one for spending the most money on new buildings. That's enough money to build over 20 brand new AT&T Dallas Cowboys stadiums every year.
And we would agree with TPPF on the opposition to school bonds. I've been arguing against school bonds for years because so yes, it is a local decision. Yes, the local taxpayers are the ones that are voting in favor of these bonds, but the thing that people can't see when you're talking about peeling back the curtain is that the construction companies, they fund the Vote Yes campaigns for the bonds, and the school districts work with these construction companies to, and even the projections for the to anticipate how many students, the demographers reports. So these high growth districts then partner with the construction companies, and then they have a wish list of what they want. And because they can't afford to pay for all of this with the, M&O and the basic operating funding that they get from the taxpayers, and then much of it goes to the state for recapture and running that, the whole scheme of Robin Hood, then that leaves very little to fund all these wish lists, right?
Right.
So, the local school districts are absolutely guilty. Like, I'm not making any excuses for them. I'm just telling you how the whole thing works. And then the taxpayers, they appeal to their emotions by saying, "Oh, the kids need these indoor practice facilities. They're freezing cold outside." And then everyone says, "Yes, we don't have space for the drill team." And then they get the emotions, and people go and vote for them. They have the chambers in the real estate.
Right.
Everybody says, yay, vote for this. Yeah.
Well, the other thing is that, if your school has all those things and they are newer, and then you have an elite athletic program and you have all these additional social things that compete at UIL, people will move to those communities. I don't live in South Lake, but I butt up against South Lake, and people moved in droves to South Lake because yes, and actually, they had indoor training facilities for their football team, but the school didn't own it. A Dallas Cowboy built a home and built a basement, and the basement had indoor training facilities, and and this was before the city got so big. He let the football team use those indoor training facilities, and they were elite training facilities. And it was open, so there was nothing illegal about it.
Okay.
Yeah, I do have one other point. Okay, so I think that you can't remove the acceleration of the building of buildings. You cannot remove the fact that there was a virtue signal that, hey, if you're going to get your bond secured by the permanent school fund so that your rate is lower, we're about to cap out on that. And so a bunch of school districts went and had their hurried up and had their bonds so they could get it at that lower rate because PSF was about to cap out. And then they came back and they removed the cap so that they can use 100% of the permanent school fund to guarantee or to pledge against bonds, whether it's bonds for a charter school or bonds for a public school. They are using that, and it's kind of created a rush mentality. And then I also believe, and again, I'm not defending them, but I also believe we've had more growth than California has in the past couple of years. I mean, the Californians have moved to Texas. We're experiencing real growth. Our governor can't get up there on a platform and say Texas has all this growth, and everybody wants to come to Texas, and that shows how successful we are at running our state. And then on the other hand, have TPPF come and claim Texas has surpassed California in building new schools.
Yeah,
Well, I
they're
mean, you
both kind
just
of
can't
smart.
do that. They're incongruent. It's not being honest, and it's creating a narrative to gin up the public to be mad at the local school district. Again, as you said, you know, cause and effect, and it's
Problem, reaction, solution.
problem reaction. And Missy said to me, benefit risk, and are we stacking up morbidities that we have control over in our schools and our communities by the choices we're making? And that was a profound way to put it. Benefit, risk, and are we stacking up morbidities? And honestly, I think we have to start looking at it that way, because where
You mean
TPPF
morbidities? Like I know what are
crush
morbidities,
to
but how
crush
does
the
it?
local
Oh, to
to crush the local school districts, to
yeah,
crush local control, to kill out this middle government that we have. And that was what, that's what you mean is meant by this morbidity, to kill that, because the public becomes so enraged. And again, I think we have to, TPPF is nefarious in a lot of their messaging.
okay, I'm gonna keep going.
Okay.
But maybe this money goes toward important construction projects like making schools safe, building repairs, or air conditioning installation. Well, some. But a lot of that money goes towards projects like this $20 million water park, or this $80 million high school football stadium, or this multi-million dollar swimming pool for a high school without a swim team. And the reality is that 24.5 billion is just scratching the surface of the cost. These projects are also funded by accruing billions of dollars of debt. Last year, Texas school districts carried $33,542 in debt per student. That's the equivalent of one new Ford Mustang for every student in the state of Texas. But there's one area that spending hasn't increased: teacher salaries. Since 1970, Texas has increased per student funding by 166%. But in that same time period, teacher pay has only increased by 60%. So more money is pouring into the system, but it's not going to teachers, and student outcomes are only getting worse.
Okay, I have a major bone to pick with him on this, because there's been this shadow nonprofit that has been driving the bills of the legislature, and that's the Commit Partnership, run by Todd Williams, Goldman Sachs guy. So Todd works in a coalition with TPPF and Texas 2036, and they really lobbied hard to get that House Bill 1605 passed. But in talking about teacher salaries, the Commit Partnership came up with the merit pay scheme. And so that has been pushed through the legislature. They had House Bill 3 with it was an omnibus bill years ago that was supposed to pour all this money into public education. Well, what TPPF is missing, besides the bond debt paying for the devices and not mentioning that, they also did not mention millions upon millions going to the Commit Partnership, the reforms that they champion, and the network of people that work for Commit, and the shell game of money of these entities that they set up, like Early Matters Dallas and the Texas Impact Network, and they lobby at the legislature. That funding, and Abbott appointed Todd Williams, the founder of Commit, to 4 boards and commissions to steer education funding. TPPF may not see that as explicitly as we see that, but to leave them out of the equation when they're paid by the TEA, they're paid by the ESCs, the regional service centers, and they're paid the local districts have data sharing agreements with them. It's huge. And Todd was on the permanent school fund. He was on the land board. He was on the public school finance commission and the community college. So it's higher ed, it's K-12, it's early childhood. He covers all of it. And TPPF aligns with Commit to push these reforms to steer the funding and drive up debt. Todd's also the highest donor to our bond Vote Yes campaign in Richardson ISD. He donated to my opponent for school board. So it's hard to get on my soapbox on this, but this really irritates me that TPPF leaves out the role of the Commit partnership in all of these things. How would they not know? How could they not know that?
Well, again, I think that they leave it. I mean, I think that this is a propaganda piece. I mean, it's a great piece. I agree with a lot of it, but I think it's a fact piece. I think it's a propaganda piece disguised as a fact piece. Now, you and I talked, uh, Quentin, what's his name? Quintero, did an article, James Quintero, he did an article on transparency that that published about a month ago. And it's a fabulous article. And it's really true. And it's too bad they don't do more things like that, to help educate the public and expose what's happening that reduces transparency in government and accountability in government and the things that will secure the longevity of the constitutional republic. Whereas all this stuff they're doing over here in education, it all undermines. And there's a seems to be an agenda there that goes after the constitutional republic. So anytime I see them going after local control and growing the state level government or turning a blind eye to the bloat at the state level and with organizations like Commit and the education service centers and TEA, and then frankly, even for them to come forward now and say, oh, the teachers aren't getting any money. Well, they didn't show up to say the teachers need to get more money last time. They were silent, and they are heavy handed enough.
The only way they would support that is if it was baked into the school choice bill. So they were
Right. But again, they didn't even show up and say that. I mean, so I'm sorry. This is a false, manipulative piece of propaganda that they're putting out to gin up a base, to be angry at local control, to help them carry their burn the schools down agenda across the line. You give me something on transparency, I'll clap, I'll promote it. But again, even though there's so much truth in what he is saying, and we've already been out talking about it, is there a return on the investment? I can't get behind an organization or even applaud an organization if they're gonna be a part of the propaganda. They've got to be a part of the transparency and cutting the waste at the top. But they won't do that because they have a cozy relationship with the Texas legislature, and they have a very cozy relationship with the governor.
Yeah. And they don't hold the governor accountable. And I think that that's the where, I find them to be disingenuous because the governor is also driving up spending. I mean, it's all under his watch with the education agency. So our call to action is if you know people at TPPF, put pressure on them. They have resources and funding and they're donor driven. And they have an awesome responsibility and an opportunity to really put a dent in the property tax issue. There's exorbitant property taxes and really get the property tax relief for the citizens, because if they use their bully pulpit to expose the fraud, waste, and abuse coming out of the TEA and the regional service centers, you don't even have to go. I know that they're going hard after the taxpayer funded lobbying groups, but when you think about the unintended consequences, I know you and I supported that
Right.
bill, Mays Middleton, because we've had a problem with the taxpayer funded lobbying, but now we're starting to understand there are way bigger behemoth bureaucratic issues in our government. So going after TASA and TASB really doesn't solve the problems that we're seeing out of the TEA and the ESCs, and then how that is being pushed down on the independent school districts and undermining our ability to have local responsibility, local governance, local control. So anything else that you want to say regarding?
No, I mean, TPPF could actually call for a session where there were no bills, and that's what would happen. TPPF could actually call for a forensic audit of the TEA, and that would happen. But
That's true.
right now,
They actually have that much power because
yes,
they've been so entrenched in the Austin landscape in that
yes,
they know how to do things. The reason why they haven't been able to push their number one initiative is because it's unconstitutional to have school choice. We do
yes.
have the Article 7 of the Constitution to make provision for public free schools. So if the school choice bills were to pass, they would have to have major strings in order for that money to follow the child. And these bills are always bad because they are massive vendor bills. $34 billion or $36 billion was the main House Bill 1 that they supported. So there's a reason why people don't want vouchers. And the grassroots and the rural and the urban, they don't want vouchers. And that's why the bills don't pass, because the representatives won't vote for them. So TPPF is sort of spinning their wheels. I know that people think that unseating all of these reps that the governor went after is going to get him his school choice votes, because these new reps, but they still don't have the votes. And so they can keep wasting our time and tax dollars with these sessions. If our governor's only priority is school choice, we need to call him out for that. And TPPF has plenty of other things that they could work on to really find relief to the taxpayers. And we would agree with them on a lot of the points they made in the video. They just need to tell the full story. Anything else?
Well, just in closing, I really appreciated I said this in the other one, although it's at the 12th hour that they had a joint hearing on protecting children from media, and that was how it was. But the SRE, not TPPF, the joint, the Senate and the House, yeah,
Commending the committee, yeah.
But I want to say, the most important thing that is being left out of the messaging right now is that the delegates to the GOP convention made a decision that protecting children from sexual exposure, which is what's happening with the internet and the Chromebooks in the schools, and amplify, and I can go on and on and on, and there's all these other things that's causing that. But the Republican Party literally said this is more important because it affects every child, and the school choice is only affecting a couple or a small percentage, a lower percentage, and they inverted those. They moved that up to number 3. And for the SREC to say we've got our own set, it doesn't look like what the delegates voted on. We've got our own priorities, and this is what we're going to go off of. And
You're
for the
saying
governor,
the state Republican executive
committee
is saying, forget what the delegates voted on at the convention on our priorities. What they're making as a priority is what?
Well, they voted on their own list of priorities, and that's what they're pushing. And it's not the same list as the list that the delegates voted on. And again, maybe everybody's view is like Steve Ministeri's, that the GOP convention is irrelevant.
Steve Ministeri is Abbott's senior advisor, and he mocked those who go to the convention and vote on the Republican priorities, because I asked him, why is the governor doing this as his priority of school choice when we've got all these other issues like the border and election integrity and Democrat chairs and whatever? Why is he making this when his people? And he said those are activists, and he marginalized those of us who show up at the convention to put our voice in to say what our priorities are as we the people. And so he didn't value that. He thinks that
All right. I just, again, I think, TPPF has got a heavy hand here, and
Yes.
they can respond to the people, or they can continue to think that they're above the people and that the agenda of the governor and their biggest donor is all that matters. And when
So to
we have,
them, much is given, much is expected, and we
yes,
this is an encouragement to TPPF. Although we run up against you often, we often oppose your agenda, especially when you put people like Mandy Drogan in there and posing as being concerned about parent empowerment. We are asking for them to be more authentic
yeah.
and be in the things that will actually bring property tax relief and some relief to the taxpayers. And we'll also have real solutions for those of us on the ground who are trying to get a classical model of education, return to books, paper, pencils, and pay the teachers. And we agree with them. We should be paying the teachers, pay the teachers with the money saved on the wasteful devices and train them and then return the rest to the taxpayers. They could do that tomorrow and we would see the needle moved much faster than what you and I can do, I think.
Yeah, 100%. But yet they've got to stop with the
They have an
propaganda
agenda. Yeah, stop it.
and the division. I mean, they want the division. It's unbelievable. So anyway,
Okay.
great to record.
Yeah.
Thanks a bunch.
All right. Bye, y'all.